In her million-dollar villa in Beverly Hills, Victoria Whitman ignored Diego, the 17-year-old son of her maid Carmen. That night at the charity dinner, Victoria called Diego to the chess table for entertainment. "Come on, boy, show us how chess is played in the slums," she said with a smile. But Victoria didn't know that Diego had been playing an underground chess tournament since age 8 and had never lost. Victoria Whitman's villa in Beverly Hills was a perfect display of wealth and arrogance. Italian marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and Van Gogh reproductions adorning the walls tried to show how cultured this woman was. But the real display was Victoria herself and the snobby friends around her. That evening, Victoria was hosting a charity dinner for the Disadvantaged Youth Foundation. Ironically, while this foundation aimed to help poor children, a real poor child was serving in Victoria's house, and no one gave him a second thought. Carmen Santos, 42 years old, was a strong Mexican woman raising her son alone. She had been cleaning Victoria's house for 10 years, doing her job humbly. Victoria never called her Carmen, only addressing her as the Maid. Carmen didn't speak up because she needed the job. Diego Santos had come that night to help his mother. The 17-year-old young man was a senior at Lincoln High School in East LA. He wore black pants and a white shirt. His mother had convinced him to look proper. Diego quietly served canapés, filled guests' champagne glasses, trying to remain invisible. Among the guests were Hollywood producer Robert Hamilton, real estate mogul Margaret Foster, and plastic surgeon Dr. Stephen Walsh. These people didn't even look at Diego. To them, he was just a servant. In the corner of Victoria's living room stood a handmade Italian chess set. Victoria would tell everyone it was worth $15,000, but she didn't know how to play chess. It was just a decorative showpiece. "Oh, this beautiful chess set," said Margaret Foster, raising her champagne glass. "Victoria, do you play?" Victoria smiled. "Of course I play. But playing with people here would be too easy. Maybe we need a bit of challenge." Just then her eyes fell on Diego. The young man was quietly collecting dishes. A wicked idea came to Victoria's mind. "Hey, boy," Victoria called to Diego. "Come here." Diego approached hesitantly. "Yes, ma'am?" "Do you know chess?" Victoria's voice had a mocking tone. "I know a little," Diego replied humbly. Victoria turned to her guests. "Great, then this will be fun. This boy can show us how chess is played in the ghettos." Robert Hamilton laughed. "Victoria, how generous of you. You'll teach the poor kid how real chess is played." There was no change in Diego's face, but there was a sparkle in his eyes. Carmen watched anxiously from the kitchen. She knew what her son was capable of. "All right, ma'am," Diego said calmly. "We can play." Victoria smiled as if she had won a victory. She would humiliate this poor child in front of her guests, making herself look bigger. But Victoria didn't know that Diego Santos was the youngest and most dangerous player in the Los Angeles underground chess scene. The guests gathered around the chess table. Victoria made a big show of preparing the chessboard, carefully placing each piece, as if every part of this handmade Italian board was priceless. "Now, boy," Victoria said in a patronizing voice, "I want you to start with the white pieces. This will give you an advantage." Diego nodded silently and sat in front of the white pieces. His hands were at the edge of the board, but he wasn't touching the pieces. His eyes were studying the board, but not just the board. Victoria's body language, the guests' expectations, the dynamics of the environment. "This is so cute," whispered Margaret Foster. "The poor boy probably only knows basic moves." Dr. Walsh took out his phone. "I should record this. Victoria's charity work." Victoria was proud. "Diego, don't be afraid. I'll teach you. Chess isn't just about making moves. Strategy is needed too." Diego made his first move, E4. Classic, simple, powerful. Victoria knew this. Every amateur started with a 4. "Ah, king's pawn opening," Victoria said, as if showing off her knowledge. "Very predictable. Poor children always start like this." Victoria made her move, E5. Symmetrical response. Diego responded, Nf3. Victoria, NC6. Diego, BB5. "Ruy Lopez," Diego murmured to himself. Victoria stopped. "What did you say?" "Nothing, ma'am, just, this opening is called Ruy Lopez." Robert Hamilton frowned. "How do you know that?" Diego shrugged. "I read it in books." But the truth was different. Diego had been playing with old Mexican masters at Rampart Park in East LA since age 8. Then he had joined underground chess clubs in Boyle Heights. At 12, he had won his first money tournament. At 15, he had reached a 2,400-plus rating online. At 17, no adult player in Los Angeles would challenge him anymore. The game continued. Victoria moved confidently, explaining each move. "Now this is called castling. We take a defensive position like this." Diego played silently. His moves were quick but thoughtful. He could see Victoria's every strategy in advance, bypassing the traps. After the 10th move, Victoria's comfort began to diminish. There was a pattern in Diego's moves. There was purpose. This wasn't random movement. "Interesting," said Dr. Walsh. "The kid is actually playing well." Victoria went into defensive mode. "Of course, I'm giving him a little space, teaching moment." But after the 15th move, Victoria's position became critical. Diego was silently but systematically destroying her position. Knight and bishop combinations, pawn structure attacks, space control, these were professional-level techniques. Carmen watched from the kitchen and smiled. She knew what her son could do. "Victoria," said Margaret Foster worriedly, "are you okay?" "The boy is pressuring you." Victoria looked at the board with sweaty palms. How had this happened? This was just a poor child. How could he know how to play chess? After the 20th move, Victoria was cornered. All of Diego's pieces were working in coordination. Victoria's king was in danger. "Checkmate in 3, Diego said quietly. Victoria raised her head. "What?" "Checkmate in 3 moves, ma'am. I can show you if you'd like." The room fell silent. No one could believe it. Victoria's world began to crumble. Victoria's face turned bright red. This isn't possible. You're wrong." Diego pointed to the board. "Queen to h5, king forced to g8, then rook to h8 checkmate. Or if you try a different defense, queen to f7 is direct checkmate." Robert Hamilton looked at the board more closely. He wasn't a chess player, but he could see basic patterns. Diego was right. Victoria's king had no escape route. "Holy shit," Hamilton whispered. "The kid is right." Dr. Walsh stopped recording the video on his phone. This wasn't going on social media. Victoria made a desperate move, moving her queen to a random square. Diego calmly moved his queen to h5. Check. Victoria was forced to move her king to g8. Diego moved his rook to h8. Checkmate. Silence. Complete silence. Margaret Foster put down her champagne glass. "Victoria, you lost." Victoria stared at the board, unable to accept the reality. How was this possible? She was Victoria Whitman, the social queen of Beverly Hills. Who was this child to beat her? "This is luck," Victoria said, trembling. "Lucky moves. Let's play again." Diego reset the board. "Of course, ma'am." The second game was even worse for Victoria. This time, Diego used a different opening, Sicilian defense. Victoria didn't even recognize it. In 12 moves, Victoria's entire position collapsed. Would you like to resign?" Diego asked respectfully. Victoria wanted to knock over the pieces, but she had to maintain control in front of the guests. "Fine, but this is a fluke." "A third game?" Diego offered. This time, Robert Hamilton intervened. "Victoria, maybe?" "No!" Victoria snapped. "One more time." The third game was a massacre. Diego checkmated Victoria in just 8 moves. He used a scholar's mate pattern, but the advanced version. Victoria had no chance. Dr. Walsh approached Diego. "Son, where did you learn this?" Diego replied humbly. "Mostly from books, doctor, and a little by playing with old men in the park." "Which park?" Margaret asked. "Rampart Park, ma'am, downtown." Robert Hamilton realized this child was real talent. "Do you play in tournaments?" Diego hesitated. Underground tournaments weren't legal. Money gambling was involved. "Some informal games, sir." Carmen came out of the kitchen, feeling it was time to send her son home. "Diego, it's time to go home." But Victoria wasn't finished yet. Her ego was completely destroyed. "Wait," she said to Diego. "Who are you? Who are you really?" Diego looked at his mother. Carmen nodded. "Tell the truth." "My name is Diego Santos, ma'am. I'm a senior at Lincoln High School, and—" He paused. "And?" Victoria insisted. "And last month I received an official rating from USCF, 2,438. This makes me second in California in the under 18 category." Complete shock in the room. Victoria's mouth hung open. "Stanford University offered me a full scholarship," Diego continued, "for the chess program. But the family financial situation, Robert Hamilton went into business mode. Wait, you're a 2,400 plus rated player? Yes, sir. And Stanford wants you? Yes, sir. Hamilton looked at Victoria. Victoria's face had turned ash gray. The Queen of Beverly Hills had been publicly humiliated by a Maid's son, and worst of all, this child was a real genius. Victoria Whitman's prestigious dinner party had turned into a complete disaster. The guests had now surrounded Diego, talking with him. Victoria stood in the corner, being ignored in her own house. Diego, said Robert Hamilton excitedly, do you participate in professional tournaments? Actually, sir, I mostly play in the underground scene. Official tournaments are expensive. Entry fees are too high for us. Dr. Walsh pulled out his wallet. How expensive? Major tournaments require $200 to $500 entry fees, sir, plus travel costs, hotel. Margaret Foster was shocked. You're this talented but have no financial support? Diego shrugged. Chess isn't popular in our neighborhood, sir. There's basketball, soccer, but chess, only old Mexican men play in the park. Carmen proudly watched her son. Diego was speaking respectfully but confidently. Even when talking about the hardships they faced, he maintained his dignity. Victoria couldn't stand it anymore. This is ridiculous, she said loudly. This child is probably cheating, or beginner's luck. Diego turned to Victoria. If you'd like, we can play blindfolded, ma'am, or a simultaneous exhibition. I can play all of you at the same time. Robert Hamilton's eyes lit up. Seriously? You can handle multiple boards? Yes, sir. My record is 12 opponents at once, 11 wins, 1 draw. Victoria became desperate. This is impossible. This child is lying. Dr. Walsh took out his phone, searched Diego Santos Chess California on Google. Results came immediately. Holy shit, Dr. Walsh whispered. Victoria, look at this. On the screen were Diego's tournament results. Los Angeles Junior Champion, 2023. California State Under-18 Finalist, 2024. Online rating, 2,438. Expert level. Stanford University scholarship recipient Margaret Foster took the phone, read out loud, Diego Santos, 17, from East Los Angeles, considered one of the most promising young chess talents in California. Despite financial hardships, managed to achieve expert-level rating through online play and local tournaments. Victoria's world crumbled. This wasn't just a poor Mexican kid. This was a legitimate chess prodigy. Robert Hamilton's business instincts kicked in. Diego, do you have an agent? A sponsor? No, sir. I just live with my mother. She does cleaning. I work part-time at McDonald's. Hamilton pulled out his card. I'm a Hollywood producer. This story is incredible. We could make a documentary. Plus, I have connections in the chess world. Dr. Walsh was also interested. I know charity foundations, scholarship programs. Margaret Foster added, and I have social media influence. This story could go viral. Victoria realized the party had been completely hijacked. Diego was the center of attention. Everyone wanted to help him. Victoria stood humiliated in the corner. This is enough, Victoria exploded. This is my house. This child is a servant. You, pointing at Diego, you're not a guest here. Awkward silence. Carmen stepped forward. Mrs. Whitman, I apologize. We'll leave. But Robert Hamilton intervened. Wait, Carmen. Victoria, in a stern voice. This is inappropriate. Victoria realized she had committed social suicide. In front of these influential people, she had been cruel to a child and his mother. Diego, Hamilton said, come to my office tomorrow. We'll discuss serious business, Dr. Walsh agreed. And contact me about scholarship opportunities. Margaret Foster, I'm starting a social media campaign tonight. Victoria watched helplessly as her guests made plans with the Maid's son. Her prestigious evening had become a complete disaster, and worst of all, everyone would remember Diego. Victoria, however, Victoria would be remembered as an arrogant, cruel woman. 3 months later, Diego Santos's life had completely changed. Robert Hamilton's documentary, The Prodigy in the Kitchen, was streaming on Netflix, watched by millions. Dr. Walsh's charity connections had provided Diego with full tournament funding. Margaret Foster's social media campaign had made Diego a nationwide chess celebrity. Victoria Whitman, however, had become a social pariah. The video from that night, secretly recorded on a phone, had gone viral. Victoria's cruel comments and condescending behavior were being talked about throughout Beverly Hills. Her country club membership had been canceled. She had been asked to resign from charity boards. Diego was now studying at Stanford University on a full scholarship. He was chess team captain, representing USC in national tournaments. More importantly, he had started an inner-city youth chess program, giving free lessons to children in East LA. Carmen no longer worked for Victoria. Robert Hamilton had hired her as a personal assistant with a decent salary and proper respect. She was no longer addressed as the Maid, but as Carmen. Victoria's villa now hosted empty parties. People avoided her. Her social calendar was empty, her influence gone. She sat alone with her expensive chess set, but still didn't know how to play. Diego's success story had become national news. 60 Minutes interview, Good Morning America appearance, sponsorship deal with chess.com. But Diego remained humble. "Privilege comes with responsibility," Diego had said in an interview. "I'm lucky to have gotten this opportunity. Now I must create the same opportunities for other kids." Victoria had watched that interview at home, alone. Diego's maturity, grace, and wisdom shamed her. How could she have been so cruel to this child? The most painful moment was when Victoria's neighbor Janet commented, "Victoria, you always claimed to be charitable, helping poor people. But when a real poor genius was living in your house, you tried to humiliate him." Victoria realized that lifelong patterns of prejudice and classism had defined her. Wealth had only given her the opportunity to display these attitudes. Diego, meanwhile, had become a rising star in the international chess community. He was being invited to European tournaments. He was on track to achieve the Grandmaster title at 18. Sports Illustrated was going to make him a Future of American Chess cover story. Most importantly, Diego's inner-city program had reached 200-plus kids, East LA, Compton, South Central. Diego's influence was seen everywhere. Young kids now thought chess was cool. Carmen proudly watched her son. "Mijo," she would say to Diego, "you're doing amazing things, but the most important thing, you're still a good person." Victoria's story had become a cautionary tale. Privilege without empathy was dangerous. Prejudice was ultimately self-destructive. The final irony: Victoria's Disadvantaged Youth Foundation, which had never helped Diego, was now trying to fund Diego's program. But Diego had politely declined. "Some bridges," Diego had said diplomatically, "can't be rebuilt. It's better to build new foundations." Victoria, looking out the window, occasionally seeing Diego on TV, wondered what could have been different if she had shown kindness instead of cruelty that night. But it was too late now. Diego Santos had achieved everything for himself, despite Victoria's obstacles. And Victoria Whitman had learned that real power comes from respect, not fear. Unfortunately, this lesson had been too expensive. Fictional.